Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Marriage Podcast. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Willow.
Super excited to have you back. If you are coming back, welcome back. I don't know why you're back, but you're back.
No, we're excited to have you back.
Yeah. It was interesting to see the number of people that listened to the first episode, and the feedback that we got was great. So keep it up. Let us know what you think, because we're doing this to serve other people, not just to hear ourselves talk.
Oh, yeah, because I don't want to hear myself talk. I know for sure I don't want to hear myself talk.
Well, I want to hear me talk, but probably no one else wants to hear me talk. Oh, man. Well, we're super excited to just spend a little bit of time with you guys. We don't want to take up your whole entire day, night, whenever you're listening to this. Hopefully you listen to this as a couple, by the way. It's really easy to want to grow by yourself. I think there is some really great benefit to growing as a couple, right? That was something that we had to learn early on in our marriage.
Growing together.
Yeah, growing together, which most people don't grow together. They grow apart. So if you don't want to grow apart, you should listen to this podcast with your spouse.
But if you can't, you can always talk about it.
Yeah. Well, you got to listen to it still. Listen to it separately, but
Yeah.
at the same time. No, not at the same time. Separately, but then talk about it.
Yeah.
That's always a good thing. So what are we talking about today?
We're talking about
Expectations. Yep. And sorry, I cut you off. I was like, let's get this thing going. Well, actually, before we even talk about expectations, what are we expecting from this episode and every episode?
Well, we're just expecting to have a conversation about what's going on in our life, just to encourage other couples to keep going. And hey, we're going through some things that are hard too. And just to give you real life things that happen, just to be authentic and share some things about marriage and life.
I think that's huge, because you and I know a lot of people who are a lot of couples, I should say, not just people, but we know couples that they feel like they're the only ones going through things. And you're not. You're not the only one that's possibly frustrated with your spouse because they didn't put their toothbrush in the right place, or, fill in the blank, or like they work too much, or they don't. I don't even know what. There's lots of things. But that is one of the big things, is we want to encourage everyone listening that you're not alone in what you're going through as a couple. There are a lot of people that experience similar things within their marriage. Not everything is exactly the same, but there's a lot of things that we can learn from each other and grow from. We don't have everything figured out. I feel like we figured out some things here and there along the way through mistakes and other people that have mentored us and who've taught us.
For sure.
But the other thing that we really want to walk away from our time with you guys is just being transparent. Like we said, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. We're constantly making mistakes. And we just want to live life with other people. So we're excited that you guys are spending some time with us. Let's talk about expectations. You had some expectations this last week. What were your expectations? What happened this last week?
Well, so last week I had the week off of work. So I had a lot of expectations. I had too many expectations. In fact, that's kind of what contributed, to talking about expectations. So I had started this list a while ago of like, okay, what am I going to get done on this week off that I have? And so I was slowly adding to it, and then it started getting longer and longer and longer. And then I shared some of the things with Nathan. He's like, you're not all going to be able to get all of that done, right?
I didn't even think you were going to get like a quarter of that stuff done. Yeah.
So
you had a lot on your list. Like, you wanted to clean the house. You wanted to do homeschool stuff with the kids. You wanted to bake. You wanted to make sourdough bread. Like
a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah. Like manage the bills here and there, set up different things. So yeah, I knew that, okay, I'm going to get frustrated if I can't get all of this done. So how am I going to get it all done?
Like, yeah. Well, and I don't know. I feel like there's always someone in the relationship that has great expectations that are always, maybe I shouldn't say always, the majority of times they are not being met.
Yeah. They're just over expecting things to go a certain way.
Yeah, which I think it's funny because after we got off talking last week, you were upset with me because I said that we were not going to be giving lists to people of like, here's 5 things that can improve your marriage. And we got off and you're like, I like lists.
Yeah, we were listening to it. I was like, you know what? I like lists and I like to have things to, points. So there might be some lists.
She's probably going to try and add some lists in here. I'm sorry for all of you people that don't care. But for those of you that do love lists, tune in. There will be some lists probably coming out in the future of some kind.
At some point.
Yeah. So we were talking about expectations. So you had all this stuff going on. And I had to reel you back in. I had to say, what is it specifically that you want to accomplish this last week? And I think that's one of the things that we need to do as couples is we need to stop and we need to look at our spouse and we need to clarify. I think that's the number one thing that we can start to do if we want to minimize the frustrations in our marriage is we need to clarify things always.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Always asking questions or what do you mean by that? Or what do you expect out of that? Just to clarify. So we're on the same page and not creating different ideas of how things are going to go, those expectations in our heads.
Yeah, because even from the beginning of our marriage, you've always had expectations of how things are going to go. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's the majority of where our frustrations and conflict has come from, I would say, is you having an expectation of what is going to happen, of how something is going to play out. And then when that doesn't happen, that's when things get derailed massively, right?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, for me, like when I have an expectation, whether that's one that's like I'm over expecting something to happen or an expectation that's like the plans don't go as planned, then it kind of just derails everything for me. And then I get upset and then frustrated with you.
She never gets frustrated with me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was funny too, because you had expectations. Like we kind of pared this down specifically to what was the number one thing that you wanted to accomplish this last week? Because you had all this stuff. What did we end up nailing it down to? So
I combined all the things that I wanted to do and just thought about like, okay, well, what really matters? What should I really expect out of this week realistically? And that just came down to teaching our kids about God, like leading them to God, whether that's like words or actions or what are we doing? And then spending time with you and our family.
Yeah.
So anything on my list that didn't really need to do that kind of went down to the bottom. That didn't fit that category kind of just went down to the bottom.
Yeah. So it was mainly focused on relationships. It was focused on creating relationships, deeper relationships with our kids, but then also having them experiencing God in our home. And that's kind of been one of our big things, like even on a grandiose scale of, what are our expectations on parenting? Like, what are we trying to do? So there were a couple of different things that we were talking about of what you can do when it comes to expectations, like managing expectations, I think is a big thing. What are some of the things that help you when expectations aren't met? Because you started off the week with some pretty high expectations of how the day was going to go. And then the kids woke up.
Right, exactly. The kids woke up and they needed to be disciplined. It wasn't going smoothly.
Not at all. Like even this morning, like we were trying to get a little bit of extra sleep because we didn't have to wake up super early, like 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
And woke up to them in our room. I don't even remember what they were saying, but I just remember going, "Oh no, not this."
Yeah.
And you weren't having a good time with it either.
No, well, my expectation that I had in my head was, okay, they're going to play in their room until we're done reading our Bibles and we're going to go make breakfast. But that didn't happen. So then I started getting frustrated. Like, okay, I'm working on being a better wife and being a better mom and disciplining our children, following through, encouraging my husband. But then when those expectations of like everything, the plans for me in my head, the plans didn't work out. Like they were going to go play and I was going to start the day out right. I started yelling at them. And then I got frustrated. And
And
then
then I was yelling at them because
Yeah.
I was frustrated that they were frustrating you. And so I was like, go back to bed.
And then I was
what color is
frustrated
your
with
light? And then you got
you.
mad at me because I was frustrated with them.
Yeah.
So I was like, it was just like this perfect tornado storm of like, and then it seemed like it took forever to get back on track.
Yeah.
And I would say even before that, like before they woke you up, the plan, the expectation was, we're going to wake up and they're going to still be in their room, and then we'll kind of deal with them a little bit, but then you're going to have your time to read. And probably you had the expectation that you were going to read before they even woke up.
Right. Exactly.
Which is normally what happens. And then they come in the room and, disrupt that time. So essentially, I tried to do my best to grab all the kids, and you were sitting up in your chair, and I said, I'm going to go make coffee. I'll bring coffee up to you. I'm taking the kids downstairs. So I grabbed coffee, brought it back up, and then you were frustrated with me because I took the kids, and it was just like this whole spiral down. So what ended up happening was I told you to stay upstairs and read. What for you helped you to rearrange those expectations to make things better?
Well, I think I was reminded of what I read and how I completely failed this morning. And it was because of those expectations that I had. Like the plans did not go as planned. And so I was just reminded of I read Proverbs 29, and it was talking about the fool and the wise person, where it says a fool goes full vent to his anger, and something like the wise holds it in check or something like that. And I was like, oh, well, that was me. Fail. But no, what brought me back was just remembering that, okay, the focus is to be a good example for our kids. And am I doing that? Nope. So I need to work on that today. Even I'm being presented with all of these opportunities. So let's make the best of them instead of just getting upset about not doing the right thing. Okay, so be thankful. Thank you that you gave me this opportunity, God. Now, how can I just be a better example, and encourage you at the same time and not bring you down with my bad perspective?
Well, I think that's a good point of perspective. What kind of perspective do you have? Because we all have a perspective of how we want things to go in our day, in our life. And the majority of times that doesn't always work out. It doesn't always play the way that we want it to. And so we have to remember that first of all, I think that we need to clearly communicate the expectation, because that was something that we didn't do very good early on in our marriage. We didn't communicate our expectations well at all. And that left both of us frustrated with one another because we didn't know what the other one was expecting from us. Marcus Buckingham says that clarity is the antidote to anxiety. And so whenever there's anxiety and frustration in your life, it's most likely because there's a lack of clarity in that. And so in your relationship, when Willow has expectations of what she wants for me to accomplish in the day, or maybe she has expectations that she wants to accomplish and I don't know what those are, all of a sudden things get derailed really quickly. So I think that's a big thing is clarifying the expectations. Another thing that I think is really important that we've talked about before is, as a couple, you need to move from having expectations to being expectant. We learned this back when we were in
Costa Rica.
Yeah. So we were doing country transformation trips with Maxwell Leadership Team. And while we were there, you're on these trips and essentially you don't know what's going to happen. It's just kind of it's a show. We won't say what kind of show. It's just a show. And so you never know what might happen. You might go here, you might go there. You might meet some, one or two people. You might meet hundreds of thousands of people. But at the end of the day, one of the things that was clearly communicated to us was be expectant that something is going to happen. Something good is going to happen. And I think a lot of times we hold so tightly to our expectations that we become frustrated when something is off from those.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we have to be expectant of good things, like the opportunities that you're talking about. I love that you said opportunities versus the problems that are coming up, because that's something that you've wrestled with a lot, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just thinking that, all the bad things are happening to me or to us, or are so many problems instead of like nothing's going right, it's all going bad.
So there's the making sure that you have clear expectations and communicating that. I think clarifying, I kind of said that, alluded to that, but clarifying expectations.
Yeah.
So when Willow, like I remember when we both got certified in DISC, which is human personality stuff. And I remember the first time I came home, and this was before you got certified in it too. So I got certified first. And I came home and I was like, I wonder if this stuff works. And so I started playing around with it. And I was like, oh, this stuff actually works. Like, this is kind of cool. And then after a while, once you learn something, you kind of forget about it and you don't think about it. And I came home one day and you were at the top of the stairs. I think the plan was that we were going to clean the house. And I came home and I was like, what are we going to do? And you're like, well, we're going to clean the house. And I was like, okay, let's go. And I went at it. I just started cleaning. Like dust bunnies were getting slaughtered left and right. Like I was getting stuff done. You guys know what I'm talking about? Because I am a task-oriented person. You tell me to do something, and I've already started doing it before you tell me the whole thing of what I'm supposed to do. I just like getting things done. And so when she said, let's clean the house, I was cleaning the house. And then I look back and she was still standing there at the top of the stairs. And I was like, what are you doing? And you were mad at me that I was cleaning the house.
Yep.
Of what you told me that we were cleaning. And the reason for that is that you are more people-oriented than task-oriented. You focus on relationships. When it comes like the first things that are happening in our life, you focus on the relationship. Are we building a relationship? How are we improving things? And when I go about things, I'm like, what are we accomplishing? What are we getting done? Let's go. Let's go. That is a really great place of contention in your life, by the way. If you don't know that, surprise. 95% of conflict comes from this area alone, from task orientation and people or relationship orientation. So when Willow said that we were going to be cleaning the house, she envisioned me with a vacuum and her with a duster while we held hands, cleaning the house, maybe singing, The Hills Are Alive or Kumbaya.
Yeah, making memories, talking about something. Oh, so sweet. No, but like,
I mean, that is the majority of time.
The experience was there. Well, I thought that would be there versus like the getting things done. But yeah.
You know what's so funny though is this last week is everything on your list was getting things done.
Yeah,
like there was no relationship.
And that's a good example that we have like some of both. And I like to get things done, but it comes down to, having that relationship piece too, which we've had to learn.
We have definitely had to learn. And in your relationship with your spouse, it's really good to understand what your spouse is normally geared to, whether they are task or people or relationship oriented. I go back and forth between people and relationships. Sorry. It's kind of both. But that is such a great question. Like if you guys are listening to this separately right now, you should make this a topic that you talk about today. Like send the podcast to your spouse and say, hey, I want you to listen to, and at this time, I don't even know what time it is, but at this time in the podcast, you need to listen to this because I want to know whether or not you're task oriented or whether you're relationship oriented, because it is that important to understand. So going back to this idea of expectations, understanding, first of all, what expectations are there for you to have in your day? What are your expectations realistic? I think that's another one. Mm-hmm. Like your expectations this last week were not realistic. Not so much. And then what else was I saying? I'm trying to remember because I had points, but they're out the window at this point. I think at the end of the day, you have to ask some questions of one another. One of the questions that we ask a lot of each other throughout the day, but especially in the morning, is how can I pray for you?
Yeah.
And that sets the expectation of what are you foreseeing in your day that could be challenging, that could be frustrating, that I can cover you, that maybe I can't come in and fix for you necessarily, like your work. If
Yeah.
you're frustrated at work, I can't exactly do your job for you. However, I can cover you in prayer.
Yeah.
And I know as a spouse, that encourages you, right?
Exactly. It just is like that power of prayer, of like praying for each other is so powerful. But yeah, I think for me, that's been really encouraging this season of our life, of me being like not physically able to help as much around the house or anything, like even just picking up the kids or something stupid like that.
If you haven't noticed, she's kind of pregnant. If you're watching right now, you can totally see. Last week, she had a sweatshirt on.
Yeah, it's there.
It's there.
So it's just, and it's there, yeah. And I can't like squat down as easier, so I can't like physically help as much. So just,
I mean, you
being
can squat
able to-
down, you just can't get back up.
so that I have to come ask for more help. Now I need help getting up.
And she doesn't like asking for help because she wants to be the help.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So just the being able to pray in this season, to pray in this season, is encouraging to know what to expect to pray for you, so that I can help throughout the day in ways that I can't physically, but I can just be praying to cover you.
Yeah.
In those ways.
That's huge. And I think the other thing that really helps us too. So, how can I pray for you is a huge question that you can ask your spouse. Another thing you can ask is, what do you need today? Like, what are you needing? And sometimes your spouse is good at telling you what they need when you ask. Sometimes not so much. The majority of times for Willow right now, because of the season of life, it's usually a back massage that leads to nothing. I'm sorry, guys. It doesn't always lead to something. Or sometimes it's a coffee. It's a decaf coffee because she's watching her caffeine intake, and she won't ask for a coffee. And I just have to look at her and go, I think she needs a coffee, and I think she needs a break. So making her a little coffee, sending her out to the porch, sending her upstairs, which really makes you upset half the time when I'm like, hey, go upstairs, take a break.
Right.
I want a break. I don't need a break. I do the same thing to you when you tell me to go take a break.
Right, exactly.
But asking that, what do you need, is really important. Has that helped you?
Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes I think like, oh, you have a lot planned. What do you need to get done today? I think there's a lot going on. Like, what do you need to get done? But then the answer is, I just need to know that you love me. Or
That is the majority, like 90% of the time, not even joking. 90%. This comes out of my mouth when she asks me, what do I need? It's, I need to know that you love me.
yeah,
I need you to show me affection. Like, just come up and just give me a hug, give me a kiss, give me a pat on the butt. I don't know. Like, you don't do that very often.
Well, it's
it probably
like-
hurt because
right.
you probably slap hard.
I know.
Probably. I don't know. Like, I say it like I don't know.
But it's just a good like, okay, that's what I need to focus on. Not focus on, but that's the expectation. And actually, that's a realistic one. I can do that. So it just gives good guidance of what you're thinking.
Yeah. So you have the expectations from day to day that kind of happens. And then I think there's one last thing I think we should talk about, which is the expectations of the seasons that you're in. Like we were talking about seasons last week. I don't even know why I keep saying last week, because it's not even been a week. I don't even know how often we're going to be doing the podcast. I think our original intent was weekly, but we might do it every 2 or 3 days or something.
Well,
depending
weekly.
on schedule of kind of how we can get to it.
Yeah.
But at least weekly. I think we want to maybe squeeze one in, like maybe midweek or something like that. We'll see how things go.
We'll see.
But I'm trying to give you guys expectations here. I'm sorry. They're falling
We'll
short.
nail it down. Don't worry.
We'll nail it down somewhere. What was I talking about? Expectations, seasons. So last week we were talking about seasons, and I think it's really important for you to nail down as a couple. First of all, what season are you guys in? Mm-hmm. Second of all, what is the expectation that you guys have in that season? So right now, we have a lot of stuff going on. We've got the podcast. I've got my business. Willow's working. We started homeschooling. We've got church. We're doing all the, like, soccer, gymnastics. We went through everything last week. But at the end of the day, we are constantly worried that we're not doing enough. Right? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm failing miserably as a dad, that I'm not teaching my kids enough, that they're not going to be well read, that they won't read a book, that they don't even know what letters and numbers are.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we've had to come back and define what is the most important thing right now in our life. Like what are we expecting from one another in terms of showing up for our kids? Because that's the season that we're in right now. If you have kids under the age of 18, I would say 18, maybe that they're still living in your house, but I would say probably under the age of 18, your number one goal is to help them navigate the world. And that's something that we've had to decide. What is the number one thing that we want our kids to know out of all the things?
Yeah.
Because everyone wants their kid to be Einstein. Everyone wants their kid to be Mozart. Everyone wants their kid to be, hopefully not Taylor Swift, but probably going to get banned for saying that. I don't know. Geez. I'm going to get an X on my YouTube account for saying Taylor Swift.
You're flagged.
The flag.
I don't know
got
how that
flagged
works.
Or I don't know. Don't flag me, please. I don't need that. You don't need that either. But what's our number one expectation right now in our life for our kids?
Being a good example to our kids and leading them to know God. So.
I mean, that's the number one thing, because at the end of the day, if they could be the smartest kid in the world, and if they don't know Jesus, to us, that's a fail. That's a complete fail on our part. One of the greatest things that happened this year was our two oldest kids decided on their own. We didn't force them. They decided that they wanted to accept Jesus into their life. Our 5-year-old and was she 5 at the time? Was she 4?
She was 5.
She was 5.
Yeah.
Okay. So 5 and our 3-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah.
Both asked without prompting to accept Jesus into their heart, which was pretty fantastic. I wasn't there. Someone decided to do it when I wasn't. No, just kidding.
No, you were there for number 2, but not for
I was
number
there for
1,
number
so
2.
The initiate.
Yeah. The initial one was
one,
our oldest daughter.
Yeah.
But we have made it very apparent to our kids that we want them to know Jesus above all else. Even the curriculum that we're teaching them school-wise. Like, our kids are far advanced, probably for most kids their age. We have very high standards for them. But at the end of the day, we want them to have a relationship with God. And we feel miserably every single day to be great examples of that, right?
Right.
Like something happened. We went on a walk. It was a bike ride. And Rylan was saying something to you, wasn't she?
Oh, yeah. It just reminded me of like, oh, our kids are watching everything we do. And am I being a good example of everything we say to each other or everything we do? She was riding her bike and she went over a bump. And then she got to the road where she was supposed to stop. And she said, I almost had a heart attack. And I knew, I was like, whoop, that was me. Where did she get that? Wow. How did she say that? That's something I say for sure.
I was so far away from when I heard that from
you were way back walking.
I was probably 40 yards away from her.
Yeah.
I'm using yards because it was football season right now. But she was 40 yards away, and I heard her I almost had a heart attack. Our 5-year-old is telling us she's having a heart attack.
So definitely reminded me, okay, they're listening and they will say and repeat the things that we're doing.
Yeah. And that's so hard as parents. And hear our hearts with this, that you are going to see the worst traits of you in your kids and you're going to beat yourself up. And honestly, it's okay. They are going to survive. They will turn out as good human beings for the most part, as long as you teach them about Jesus, introduce them to Jesus. Because we are always talking about our kids. We're always talking to our kids about fruit in their life, if they want to live a good life. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy and that it's going to be perfect. But if they want good fruit in their life, they need to do things that Jesus would call them to do, right? The horrible bracelets that they came out years ago, WWJD.
Yes.
We're not bringing it back.
I want to bring it back for the kids.
Okay. So if you guys want WWJD bracelets, write us a note, and I will laser some WWJD bracelets. Leather bracelets, would that be cool? No?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. We could do something like that.
That'd be fun.
That'd be kind of fun. Not so much. Not for me. Put me in a sweatshop.
Put you to work.
But honestly, the reason we bring that up, or I guess I bring that up, is in the season of your life, you have to determine what it is that is most important to you. I constantly feel, I'll just say from my perspective, I constantly feel like I'm screwing our kids up, that they're not going to be smart enough. Because for me, up until probably until I graduated college, I didn't really read. I didn't love books. I didn't love knowledge. And then all of a sudden I got a taste of it. And now I want my kids to be well read. I want them to pick up books. We don't give them tablets or phones or anything like that. We give them books. They rip them sometimes, but I want them to be well read. I want them to be further than I was at their age, and that's a healthy thing, I think, as parents. But at the end of the day, we both have to remind ourselves it's not about that. Mm-hmm. The number one thing for all of us is to love God and to live a life that is righteous. And how do you do that? You link arms with your spouse. You remind yourselves daily that you're not perfect, and you encourage one another. I think that's been something that's been beneficial for both of us, encouraging one another. Yeah,
100%. Encouraging one another to do and to try our best and just bring things back to God, or just lead by example, love each other, be encouraging, and let our kids see that.
Yeah.
Because it comes back to also, like, what do we want them to see in a spouse one day, too? Like, what are they going to remember? But
huge
expectations, too, of like, oh, what they're expecting, they're seeing.
I think that'll definitely be something that we talk about in a later episode of modeling for your kids. And this is 100% a marriage podcast, but we're also going to talk about family stuff because we are a family and we've got kids. And so if you are parents, tune in. There's going to be parenting stuff here too. If you don't care about the parenting stuff, well, guess what? There'll still be stuff for you too, you married folk. I'm sure there's probably even single folk that probably listen to this. I don't know why I'm saying folk. I don't even say folk normally in my normal everyday life, but whatever. It doesn't matter. Well, with that being said, we're going to wrap up here. So thank you so much for joining us for our second podcast, which is kind of exciting. And until next time, remember to be more, experience more than I was going to say before. All right, well, let's try it again. Remember to be more,
see more,
experience more together. Oh man, we nailed it.
Bam.
Bye.